Welcome to Beyond the Pod, presented by SodaStick.com.
Brunette, he moves, Brunette back in, he scores! Minnesota has upset the Colorado Avalanche! Andrew Brunette, the game-winning goal!
Here are your hosts, the second greatest scorer in Gopher hockey history, Pat Micheletti, and the second greatest hockey analyst on this podcast, Brandon Mileski.
All right, welcome to another episode of Beyond the Pod. I'm Brandon Mileski, Pat Micheletti with me. As always, Beyond the Pod is brought to you by SodaStick.com. Hi, Pat.
Hi, Brandon. Good to see you.
And we're now joined by the very legendary Lou Nanne. Lou, thank you for all the issues leading up to this. Appreciate your time. When you were GM or coaching or as a player, did you ever have just a bunch of chaos going on right up until game time and all of a sudden you had to just go on the ice and perform?
Yeah, a lot of times, but it wasn't electronic. So,
well,
I can't remember if we had computers when I was GM.
Right.
No. Well, thank you so much for dealing with, for being very patient through all that. Let's talk about this Wild team, and back to your days as a GM. You know, when watching a team, the Wild right now have lost 3 of their last 4. Obviously, the game in Ottawa the other night, not the greatest. How do you know as a GM what poor performances are just kind of just a little bit of a bump in the road, or what poor performances might be a trend that might lead to maybe this team not being as good as you think they are?
Rather than know, I would like to say you hope, and I think that you hope that certain things are happening. A lot of times you go back and look at a track record, or you go back and just try and figure out the individuals that you're talking about, if they've been through these kind of slumps, if you see anything in their game that's different that might be affecting the way they're playing. And there are a lot of different things that go into it, but at the same time, while you're doing that, you're still looking if there are other avenues that you could take to try and improve the hockey club or try and change the direction that it's going right now, whether it be changing the players and the lines, whether it be the ice time they're getting, their partners are getting, the goaltending, how they're playing, why they're playing differently. Many times goaltenders go through slumps that they're going to come out of. At least you're always hoping they can, and sometimes they don't. So that's a decision that you really got to weigh very heavily.
Hey, Louis. I've always wondered as when you were a general manager, and as Brandon said, you're watching, you're evaluating, and the big buzzwords are regular season and then playoff ready, right? I mean, because the intensity, all of that. But when you looked at a team, because you made a lot of deals throughout your career. But when you're looking at a team now and you're saying, really good team, really good regular season, is it enough to get through the grind of a playoff? How do you differentiate that? You know what I mean? Just like, we really need to add a little bit more beef or another score or something like that. How do you evaluate that?
Well, I think that's a really good question, Pat, because they are two different type of situations. Regular season, you build a team in a regular season, you want to make sure it can make the playoffs.
Yeah.
Many times your playoff team's got to be different than what got you into the playoffs won't get you the Stanley Cup championship. And that's because there's no, I always said it was the toughest trophy to win in sports. And I said that 40 years ago. And now it's even tougher because you could have 4 series of 7 games, that's 28 games.
Oof. So
to look at the individuals you have in your team, and can they weather a 28-game playoff? Or can they weather a 15-game playoff? What's going to be the determining factor? Because we all know that playoff hockey is considerably different than regular season hockey. And you've all heard many, many times before, well, these guys couldn't be playing like that in the regular season. They'd never be able to stay out of the hospital because it is very fast and physical in the playoffs. You take no prisoners. You sacrifice your body. You play hurt. You play through pain. You play through adversity. You only have that chance, late in the year. And you're fortunate if you ever get a chance to get to play for the Stanley Cup, let alone to win the Stanley Cup. So those things are going through your mind all the time. You always want to build a team, especially in the regular season, that could play the game any way you want to play it.
Mm-hmm.
But having said that, your team in the playoffs got to be built for durability. You have to have a durable hockey club because you can't afford to lose key people in the playoffs and expect to win.
Well, then on that topic, Lou, when you look at the Wild's blue line, and I think we'd all agree that Jonas Brodin and Jared Spurgeon, extremely good defensemen, especially in the regular season, are, given your two best defensemen are kind of on the smaller side, are they built back there on the blue line to be able to make an extended run with that playoff style hockey?
Well, I had a discussion just this past week with Barrero. He said, "What concerns you?" I said, "Nothing concerns me for the regular season for them to get in the playoffs. It hasn't all year, but it always has concerned me when you get in the playoffs." And not Brodin, he's not small, so he's got good height leverage. He's okay, but you got Spurgeon, Dumba, and Goligoski. So 3 of your 6 are under 6 feet and under 195 pounds. So you always say, will they be able to sustain the kind of play you get in the playoffs? Now, one guy could, 2 guys, you got to have 3 of them because those are 3 considerable talents, really good hockey players, and they're going to get a lot of ice time. But the pounding they're going to get, the strength that is going to be needed around the net on the boards. Fortunately, like a guy like Spurgeon got such great technique when he's battling for pucks, the way he positions his body. He's like a Neil Broughton. You never saw Neil Broughton go down. Look at Kaprizov. You never see him go on the boards not winning, but he's sturdy. I mean, his thighs are like tree trunks. He's stockier, and it's a big difference. But the technique that Spurgeon's got really helps. But on top of that, you need some bulk. And I'm just wondering, can they win a Stanley Cup with 3 that size? They certainly have the ability. But again, we're talking about a 2-month battle of real physicality. Can 3 that size? And I always said that'd be my one concerning factor on that hockey club.
And there's a 4th guy if you add in Addison. I mean, who knows, if he's going to be in the lineup for how long. He's up now, but there's another guy then, and then
you're not in the lineup at the same time unless you got an injury.
Yeah,
so that's a different situation.
Yeah,
but where I'm looking at, if you're going to make a deal, you got Addison in your mind, just like you said, Pat. He'd be one of the guys. So when you're looking to make a difference in that hockey club right now, you always know Addison's younger. Goligoski's got your lefty. They should resign him for next year. He'll take a lower figure. He'll still produce. He'll then be 37, 38.
Yeah.
So Addison could always, you're looking at him and replacing Goligoski if need be. And then it comes down, Spurgeon's going to stay, and Dumba's the guy that has concerned himself with being playing somewhere else, because that's the way you're going to move that defense around.
You mentioned, maybe Dumba moving somewhere else. It almost seems, Louis, that either Kevin Fiala or Matt Dumba this offseason will be moved, just based off the way the salary is going to be structured here over the next couple of years with the salary cap. Which decision would you make on those two if you had to let one of them go?
I wouldn't be letting Fiala go. Not as I just said, you got Addison could replace the Dumba, and besides, we're not looking even to replace Dumba with an Addison. We'd be looking at replacing Dumba with a bigger size defenseman. We still have a lot of talent on defense. They're still generating a lot of offense. Even taking Dumba out of the equation, you could still. What you're going to be looking for is a big mobile defenseman that's young, that contract-wise he can fit in and allow you to re-sign Fiala.
So trade deadline. I know we're not even a month away here, Lou, but you've already talked about maybe the need for a bigger defenseman. It seems like we've kind of been through a rotation this year of what we think our needs are. Could it be a center? Could it be a defenseman, as you mentioned? Maybe a goaltender in that situation. Cam Talbot hasn't been the greatest in recent games. If you had to pick one position of need to address before the trade deadline, what would it be?
I'd be trying to get a centerman, and I really believe, and I might be wrong on this, but I believe that they could get Dvorak from Montreal, who's not had a good season, but no one in Montreal's had a good season.
Right.
He's young, he's affordable, he's talented, and he's got size. And he's, and I think he could fit in nicely in the center ice position with that team.
Yeah, it looks like Montreal might be, rebuilding, whatever. I mean, they've got some players on that team that, are pretty good, and there could be a lot of guys available.
Well, you don't want a lot. You want that one guy. You want
No, right.
feature.
I'm just saying
They could. Because if you're talking about others, the quality guys are going to have high contracts. You can afford them. So you got to. Here's the deal. I never let it, and it was different then. But I never liked trading draft choices, first round picks. I did one in my life, and I even regret to this day that I did it. And at that time, we didn't have the luxury of free agency. Now it doesn't matter when you got a high draft pick. You want to call it high, I mean low, you should say, because the Wild will be picking between 26 and 32. So that pick isn't as valuable, especially nowadays when you could sign people in free agency to make up for that losing that pick. So they can afford to give up a first round, even though you don't like to. You always want to build your stock by your kids and start building, and I think they've already done a real good job of that. But building up a real supply of players. But now's the time. See, Montreal would take a first round pick for Dvorak and something else. That's the key. What is the something else? And if they could satisfy the something else, then they'd be able to make that deal. He comes in at $4.5 million or so, and for the next couple of years. So his contract's very affordable, and then they probably would move Dumba, so you'd be able to sign Fiala and afford Dvorak, and then you got to fill that hole on defense.
You know what? Let's make it a bigger deal, Louis. Let's get Petrie in the deal too.
I knew you were going to say Petrie, but Petrie's got money. That's what.
Yeah, $6 million. That's right. Well, we can dream.
That's the thing with the trade deadline, Louis, is that the team really can't commit themselves past this year, past just doing the rental thing for the most part.
They can't to Dvorak. They can't to Dvorak. They're getting rid of Rath's salary. He's at 5.5. Dvorak's 4.5. They can do that.
Yeah.
Well, Rath's salary was coming off the books. I'm talking about after this season. I'm not talking about this season. They can make a bunch of moves, but for the next 2, 3, 4 years, when the Suter Parise buyout numbers get up higher and you got to pay Fiala, it's kind of hard to commit by a trade, acquire someone who's who's going to have a sizable number the next 2, 3, 4 years on your books.
You missed what I was saying, Brandon. That's not a sizable number. You have to remember what I said. Now, if you make a change in defense, which is done with $6.5 million or so, isn't he?
Yep.
So you're gonna, and you get Dvorak, and you already got your key people already signed all the way around. You're basically getting in position to add a young, mobile, big defenseman. If you can get him somewhere or develop him or in a trade or free agency, that's going to free up the money to sign Fiala.
Hey, Louis, back in the day, again, when you were a general manager, and you were approaching the deadline, were you one to kind of wait and see, wait as long as you could up to the deadline, or did you like to try to make a deal early?
I made deals all year long. I really didn't. I don't even remember the deadline coming into play for me.
Really?
If I felt I had to make a deal, I'd make it. It didn't matter the time of year.
Okay.
And I think I want to say when salary cap era came, that the deadline made a big difference. That's when the deadline made a big difference. And now people had to wait longer, and now they got time to move somebody. And the deadline is much more significant today than it was in our day, because we didn't have the salary cap thing issues that they're dealing with now.
Yeah. I want to get off topic for a second because I don't want to forget to mention him. But last night I'm watching Tampa and Edmonton. And who do I see on the screen? You're one of your best friends, one of my idols growing up, because that's all we could get up in Hibbing was Hockey Night in Canada. And it was either the Bruins in Montreal or Toronto and, whatever, right? But Phil Esposito, what a great man, great friend of yours. What was it like growing up with him and, just palling around and all that stuff?
He was 80 on Sunday, and I was bugging him about it. He says, just remember, I could never catch you because I was 80 and juice. So, when we grew up, our dream was to play for the senior team. We never ever figured we'd play in the NHL.
Right.
And, you just play sports, you play all the time. The funny part about it was we never had high school hockey. So you had Bantam, midget, juvenile, and then you go off play junior or go to school, right?
Yep.
When we were Bantams, Phil couldn't make our team the first year. He came out, didn't make our team. He went home crying. And his father worked for his brother-in-law, Nick DiPietro, who headed up Algoma Contractors. So they put a team in the league themselves so Phil could play. And the following year, Phil made our team. So we went from the Blackhawks to, we are always known as the Algoma Contractors because they sponsor our team. His uncle sponsored our team. But Phil was a big gangly kid.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of time, long time. People don't realize he only played 1 year junior A when he was 19, going to be 20. And he always had hand skills.
Yep.
But he was always so big and tall, and his coordination was lacking behind. But as he got older, he just kept getting better and better and better.
I was always so amazed at his ability to just own the slot area.
He
I
did.
mean, you couldn't move him. He always got in position. And, what do you have, 76 goals one year?
76 1 year and 76 assists the same year.
Yeah.
The guy was the greatest scorer in the history of the game until Gretzky came along.
Yeah.
And you're talking about owning the slot, but what people don't factor into it, I talk about elongated time, slowing the game down and plays the last second. And he had that. I mean, I'll never forget one day after the game we're playing in Boston, and Maniago was our goaltender, and Maniago and Murray Oliver and I went out, and Caesar said, "Weed, your buddy's driving me crazy." He said, "I can't take it anymore. I can't. No matter what I do," he says, "I wait him out. He waits. I wait. He waits. I wait a little longer. He waits longer. Then I finally move and he puts it where I'm not." He had the ability to hold on to that puck till the last split second before, if you were to see it in slow motion, before somebody's stick is going to just get on top of his stick or hit the puck away, and he releases it. And that's what made him such a great scorer, because the goalies would just move before he would. He had the ability to outweight him, plus being so accurate. I sold a film once, the educational film, and there was Phil and Tony and myself and JP Parisi doing a hockey school, the Nanne Esposito school here. And after we went to the Met Center to film it, and Phil did shooting, and Phil put down a bucket of pucks, and he stood there mic'd up talking about how you get the puck in your stick, you look at the target, shoot the target, and while he's shooting, every shot hits the target. And JP says to me, "That's it. I'm going home. I got 1,000 hours to practice." He said, "I can't believe what I'm seeing." And that's what it was. I mean, he just had that ability.
Louis, we've got a couple more minutes with you. I want to ask you about the Gopher hockey team. They just seem to be getting better and better as the year goes along, even with what happened with their goaltender in the middle of the season and a couple guys out with the Olympics. And, now they've won 6 in a row and ranked number 4 in the country. Do you think this team's got a chance to make a run this year?
I think it's got a chance. And Brandon, what you said, what happened to the goaltender, LaFontaine's given him great hockey in the past, and he was, deserved every accolade he got. But this year was his weakest year in my mind of the last 3. And I think the goaltending change has been a big plus. I think that's one of the keys that nobody's focusing on. And having that with the skill that they've already got, and the defensemen started to play better. They started off the season really playing poorly, I thought. But they've tightened up their game. They're playing better, and they've got some young, skilled forwards. They're fun to watch. They got speed, and Motzko's doing a great job there with that club, getting them. I don't know. They just seem to get better and better every week, and they're on a roll right now that, they could cause a lot of damage.
Speaking of goaltending, what's your confidence level in the Wild goaltending moving forward? And if you're Dean Evason, how would you handle the rotation between Talbot and Kakkonen?
Well, Pat was talking about that earlier in the show about goaltenders, and I hope I'm wrong, but I'm getting a little concerned because I've seen too many back-to-back situations where Talbot's let in more than a couple of goals, and when you start letting in a questionable goal a game, then you got to get 2 more to win, and that's very, very tough to do. So he's got to get out of that little funk he's in. He's given him fantastic goaltending since he's been here. Right now, Kakkonen is playing better. and I don't think you're going to see a strict rotation right from now on. If somebody gets hot, I think he's going to go with him, whoever it is. And I hope that Talbot gets it back because he's played really well. But goaltending is a fragile thing. And you look at how many goaltenders when they come in their rookie year, they're great. And the next year they say, oh, they got the sophomore jinx. I don't know what it is. I can't tell you how they stop the puck, what happens. But too many pucks on the short side, too many pucks up, up high. That goaltenders today play differently. They play down up instead of in the past used to be up down. And I like that better because, and I know it means they're all playing for down low shots and their legs across the crease, but I still think that until they're close enough, you stand up. That's why Brodeur was such a great goaltender, and you don't get these shots from weird angles on the short side off the shoulder. You play tight to the pipe and stand up. Mm-hmm. And I still would rather see a goaltender play that way until they're in close areas around the net.
All right, final question for you, Lou. You got 1 minute. Who in the West worries you in a playoff series?
Colorado. I think Colorado's got enough to win it. And frankly, they got the question that we all have. Kemper's playing great right now. Right. Great, but can they hold up? That's going to be Colorado's. If Colorado's goaltending is as good as the other team's goaltending that they're playing, whoever it is, they'll win the cup, I think. Mileski's still there in Tampa, and he looks great. Florida's got great goaltending this year. Bob Ross is back. He was terrible last year, and he and Knight are giving him good goaltending. So it's going to be tough, but there's so much speed and weapons on that Colorado team.
Lou, thank you so much for your time today. Really appreciate it. Thank you for handling some adversity earlier.
No problem.
Thanks, Louie. Take care.
More technology all the time.
All right. Thank you, Lou.
Take care, Lou. Thanks.
All right.
Bye.
Always great to talk with the legendary Lou Nanne. Before I talk with the legendary Pat Micheletti, I would like to tell you about SodaStick.com. Go to SodaStick.com to get your original Minnesota sports-inspired goods. If you haven't seen this stuff yet, you got to check it out. All of their apparel screen printed here in Minnesota on super soft, super comfy shirts. You will love it, and we're going to hook you up with 15% off your next order. So use the code KFAN for 15% off. That is SodaStick.com, original Minnesota sports-inspired goods. Use the code KFAN for 15% off your next order. And Pat, how have you viewed the way the Wild have played the last 4 games or so? They've lost 3 of their last 4. I think obviously you had the win in Edmonton where it looked like maybe they had righted the ship, and I kind of think they underestimated Ottawa a little bit the other night and took them a little lightly.
Well, I look at the Edmonton game and they look like world beaters. But you got to remember, Edmonton flew across country that night and had to play, and they looked to me like they were at half speed. And I watched Edmonton carefully last night, and they played hard last night. And so you kind of catch Edmonton, and so maybe that was in their minds a little bit like, oh my, we're back, we can. And they weren't as sharp against Ottawa, no question. I don't get overly concerned unless it's the pattern continues, because it's such a grind. The league is so good, and if you're off a little, you're gonna get beat, and they were off a little, and so I look at my biggest thing is, are you feeling good heading into the playoffs? Are you healthy? And once they get there, then I'm okay. Then I'm okay. It's just getting through all this. There's going to be bumps in the road. You don't want to over panic. You don't want to trade a guy off of one bad night. You don't want to, overly praise a guy over one night. So I just kind of like to stay on that even keel with this team, because I think when they're playing, when there's, when they have everyone in the lineup, they're tough. They're tough to beat.
I thought it was interesting the other night at Edmonton, Nico Sturm, a healthy scratch, and I think he was going to be a healthy scratch again in Ottawa, but then Matt Zuccarello injured and wasn't able to play in the game, and now Jordan Greenway's hurt, so Nico Sturm is going to stay in the lineup. But I found that a bit interesting and not really surprising. I don't think he had done a whole lot, Pat. He hasn't really progressed over the last month or so, I thought that fourth line had gotten kind of stale, and really kind of Nick Bukestad back on that line kind of reinvigorated a little bit, I thought.
Here's what I'm thinking on Nico Sturm, Brendan. And, we all talk about, doing everything for the team, accepting your role, all this and that. I think Nico thinks that, and this is just me and my thoughts, and I could be 100% wrong. So I want to just put that out there. But I'm thinking that, he in his head thinks I deserve a bigger role. I can play at a bigger role. And I'm kind of frustrated on the fourth line. And, and when you start thinking like that, then your play goes down a little bit. To me, and if you're looking ahead, I don't think they're going to be able to keep him because he's going to want a contract that isn't worthy of where they're going to play him.
Yep.
So if the Wild do make a deal, it would not shock me if he's involved in the deal. It just wouldn't, because there are enough players that can fill the void that he is playing on that fourth line right now. In fact, Mason Shaw just gets called up. And to me, I really like Mason Shaw, but I do think the Wild will make a deal, and I do think that they are looking hard to get a centerman, in my opinion. So it wouldn't shock me if he's involved in a deal, but again, we're going to have to wait and see.
Well, it makes sense because, as you mentioned, he's an unrestricted free agent, and he's unlikely to re-sign here. If you do get a centerman, Pat, that would slot Frederick Gaudreau, I would assuming you're getting a top six center.
Yeah.
That would slot Frederick Gaudreau probably as your fourth line center between Bukestad and Duhaime or Dewar, however they want to do it.
Yeah.
So it would make sense that Sturm really, now if you're trying to shop to Nico Sturm, putting him in the press box,
that's not the way to do it.
Maybe not gonna help out very much. But Nick Bukestad has come back the last couple games, and Pat, we saw him last year, and I just thought, ho hum, like. He started the year off on a line with Kaprizov and Parise, which is unbelievable that Kaprizov played with those two to begin the year last year.
Yeah.
And he's just been kind of an okay fourth liner. I thought his skating has improved a lot from last year to this year. He did something.
Yeah.
And for a guy his size, that if he can skate with that size, and he's got that reach, like he can be productive for you. Obviously, he had the bad injury here that Matt Zuccarello got a little slash on him, and he was out for a long period of time. Just a couple games back now, so it's the old small sample size. But I think he's looked great the last couple games, and the speed is there, the skating is there. So I'm almost wondering if a guy like that, if he's out for a while, like he's going to be able to skate better. And if that is the case, that maybe before the playoffs, I might try to sit him out a couple and make sure he's full go for the playoffs, because he can be a force on that fourth line with that skating and size ability.
I agree, and maybe his back is better this year, Brandon. We saw Parise when his back was bad; he couldn't skate very well.
Yep.
And then it got better. And so, I think I heard on the broadcast 2 nights ago. 2 nights ago, that he was working with the skating. Andy Ness, is that his name, right? Good. And really working, because he could skate the whole time through this injury. So maybe that helped him a little bit. But yeah, he did look faster. He's so big, right? He's 6'6", and he's got that long reach. And I mean, he made a great play on the goal the other night. And you know what? Again, slotted in the right spot. Not a top liner, but is certainly above average on that fourth line. So, that makes a general manager think again, okay, if he's going to be in there, then, maybe we could do this, or this at the trade deadline. So, it's a bonus to have everyone healthy and everyone obviously on their game.
I tell you, the lineup looked a little different without Matt Zuccarello in it the other night, and
it did.
Not a long-term injury, and he's expected to be back. But I mentioned this on Wild Weekly last night with Kevin Fallness that typically if Zuccarello was out of the lineup, like you would try to find a skill guy to complement with Kaprizov,
right?
But the way Fiala and Boldy are going together, you don't want to split those two up.
No.
So, all of a sudden Kaprizov was with Hartman and Foligno, and let's face it, Hartman hasn't been that great in a while. I know he's still second on the team in goals and he's had a good season, but I feel like his play offensively, like he's just kind of a passenger with Kaprizov and Zuccarello. But you can tell like he really can't drive a line with Kaprizov, and then having Foligno with those two as well. It just Kaprizov didn't have that guy he could pass to and make plays and do give and goes and be able to read each other, and it really had an impact, I thought, on your ability to score, to not have those two great lines out there together.
Well, you know what? I mean, you in that statement you just made makes me even want to get a centerman more, because then we're almost saying the same thing about the next line, right? Freddie Gaudreau has been fine, and he's not going to hurt you, but he's not going to be that dynamic guy that can drive Boldy and Fiala, when it gets to playoff time. And that's when I really think you need just a savvy veteran guy who doesn't panic, has been there before type playoff guy. And Boldy's going to need that too. He's going to need reassuring when it hits the playoffs. It's going to be like, whoa, what happened? The game went from 50 to 100 miles an hour, right? And so, not that he can't handle it, but like Kaprizov last year, it takes a cycle to really get going in the playoffs, and to understand how hard you got to play and how important every shift is, and the extra stuff that you have to do to win. And so you just made me want a center so bad.
Have you come to a conclusion which one you want?
Who's available, and I was going to mention, thanks for bringing that up. Seattle has a kid, but Jarn Krok.
Yes.
And he's only making, I think, $2 million, and he's a pretty good player, and he's rumored to go to the Washington Capitals. But man, I'm sure the Wild have talked to everybody just to see who's available. But he's a bigger guy. He's played playoff hockey before. I think he's had a pretty good year. So there's just another name to have people stew on.
Yeah, I don't know if I still completely agree with Lou about the Dvorak, and ultimately, like, Dvorak has a good salary. Just because you have a good salary doesn't mean that you're going to be able to fit him in the next couple of years. I still think they got to go the rental route. If you're going to pay Fiala, and they're going to have to lose Fiala or Dumba regardless.
Do you think so? 100%, or is there a way to keep both of them?
It's going to be hard because those Parise Suter buyouts go up mightily next year. I think you're going to add about $8 million to your salary cap.
Okay.
I guess technically they could not re-sign Goligoski. Who knows what's going on with the Goligoski situation? But you also have to look at, it's going to go up to 8. It's going to go up like $8 million next year. It's going to go up even more the following year. Matt Boldy is going to get paid at some point, probably in the next 2 years, and you're going to have to pay him. So I think this summer it's Fiala or Dumba are gone. I would guess it would be Dumba at this point, unless Fiala's, and we don't know what Fiala wants for money, and Fiala might think he's an $8 million player, and at times the way he plays, I don't necessarily doubt that. So the higher he goes with his salary, who knows? He might put himself out of range for the Wild to want to re-sign him.
Right.
So I don't think you can commit to salary guys in years 2, 3, 4, unless you are giving up salary on your current team. And then, how much are you really improving if you have to give away salary on your team?
Right. To answer your question, if I had my wish list, I would go after Hurdle. I really would. He's big, he's strong, he plays hard, pretty talented guy. That would be my wish list if we could get somebody. I think, now
he's probably going to be the one you have to give up the most assets for, just because of his age. And
yep. But if you think you're going to do it, then so be it. Now,
how about Nashville? Rumor that they're willing to to sell on Philippe Forsberg, even though they're currently in the playoffs right now.
And they're playing really well. I mean,
Yeah.
they beat Florida the other night. That one blew me away. But he is going to be a free agent at the end.
But long term, it's probably the smart move.
Yeah, and because
are they really going to win the cup this year? I mean, so ultimately, it's probably a savvy move by the GM.
Right, very, and you'll probably get a number one and a top prospect or whatever for him. And guess what? There are teams that will say, sure, we'll do it, because he's a really good player. But I want to, Pavelski, I don't think Dallas is going to move him. I mean, they're not in the playoffs yet, but and they won in overtime last night, so they're inching closer. I don't think Dallas would move him. I just don't.
Well, I mean,
who do you want?
Well, if Pavelski was available, that's who I would want first. And if Dallas starts to slide a little bit in the standings over the next 3 weeks, I could see a scenario in which, Dallas is a mess. That franchise with Ben and Sagan and their age and the contracts they have right now. I mean, Dallas. I don't. If you're the Dallas GM, I don't know how you get out of that down there.
It looks like Klingberg is going to be moved. Does he interest you at all? But again, it'd have to be a rental.
Is he a free agent after this year?
Yes.
That's interesting.
He's a pretty good player.
But that's another guy you're going to have to give up a lot for. So give
up a lot and then probably lose him.
All right. One last topic before we go, Pat. Gopher hockey. They won 2 at Penn State, a building they historically have kind of struggled in. Win 2 last weekend in Penn State. They've won 6 in a row. Still have a chance here to win the Big Ten regular season title over the final weekend. They've got Wisconsin this weekend.
Yeah, and they get Jackson Nelson back in the lineup. And so they're getting healthy again. The emergence of their freshmen, Rhett Pitlick, Hughlin, Chaz Lucius, Tristan Brose. Those guys have been the driving force for this team as of late. Myers was gone, Nyes was gone, and I'm not even including the freshman Nyes. They're healthy now, and Jackson Lacombe on defense, in my mind, has been one of the best defensemen in the country the second half of the year. He was horrific. He would admit it in the first half. Just couldn't find his game. Gets away at Christmas, comes back, and the kid's been phenomenal. So they've got a lot of guys playing really, really well, and they're feeling it. So they're going to be an awfully, awfully tough out come tournament time. Because remember, 3 weeks ago, Brandon, we were talking about, are they going to make the tournament?
Yep.
And
now they're like a lock.
And they caught fire, and now they're number 4 or 5 in the pairwise. So now they're thinking, hey, we might get a number 1 seed.
Yeah, I got a chance at a 1 seed.
Yep. So
pretty crazy.
I'm bullish on the Gophers.
Not surprising to me, Pat. Thank you as always for joining. We'll talk to you next week.
Sounds great. Thanks, Brandon.
All right. He's Pat Micheletti. I'm Brandon Mileski. This has been another episode of Beyond the Pod, brought to you by SodaStick.com. Use the code KFAN for 15% off. Reminder, you can watch this podcast on the KFAN YouTube channel. You can also listen to it on the iHeartRadio app or wherever you get your podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button. We'll talk to you next week right here on Beyond the Pond. Bye.